Your enemy wins the moment you react, not when they insult you, not when they spread a rumor, challenge your position, or try to embarrass you. They win when they can choose your emotional state, predict your response, and make you act against your own interests. Most people believe defeating an opponent requires greater aggression. They raise their voice, reveal everything they know, answer every accusation, and rush to prove they are not weak. But this often gives the other person exactly what they wanted: information, attention, emotional evidence, and control over the timing. The most dangerous person in a conflict is rarely the loudest. It is the person who remains clear while everyone else becomes reactive. This is not about revenge, cruelty, or manipulating innocent people. It is about understanding how hostile, competitive, or dishonest people operate and becoming mentally difficult to control. There are 7 psychological shifts that change the balance of almost any conflict. None requires intimidation. None requires becoming cold. They work because they remove the advantages your opponent expected to have over you. And the final shift reveals something most people discover too late. Sometimes the only way to outplay an enemy is to stop accepting the game they created. Naomi learned this during a Monday morning meeting. She had spent 3 weeks preparing a proposal that could save her department time and money. Before she finished presenting, Victor, a colleague who had quietly competed with her for months, interrupted. "That sounds impressive," he said, smiling, "but did Naomi calculate what happens if her assumptions fail?" The question itself was reasonable. The tone was not. He was not asking for information. He was inviting the room to doubt her competence. Naomi felt heat rise into her face. She began defending every detail at once. She spoke faster, opened files she had not planned to show, and answered questions no one had asked. The more she explained, the more Victor leaned back and watched. By the end, Naomi had provided 20 minutes of nervous defense against one sentence. Victor had not defeated her proposal. He had changed her emotional state, and she had done the rest. That evening, Naomi replayed the meeting repeatedly. She imagined sharper responses and humiliating comebacks. But the sentence she needed was much simpler. "The risk analysis is covered on the next page. Let me finish, and then I'll take questions." That response would not have destroyed Victor. It would have denied him control of the room. If you want to understand power, human behavior, emotional discipline, and strategic boundaries without becoming manipulative, subscribe to Dark Realism Psychology. The first mental advantage is the ability to create distance between provocation and response. Most attacks are designed around speed. Someone says something insulting, sends an accusing message, or confronts you publicly. Your body treats the moment as an emergency. You want to answer immediately because silence feels like defeat. But an immediate response is often the most predictable response. When people know what triggers you, they know how to direct you. Criticize your intelligence, and you begin proving how intelligent you are. Question your loyalty, and you sacrifice your boundaries to demonstrate devotion. Accuse you of fear, and you accept a reckless challenge to show courage. The provocation becomes a steering wheel. A pause takes that wheel away. The pause may last 3 seconds in a conversation, 3 hours before answering a message, or 3 days before making an important decision. Its purpose is not to punish the other person. Its purpose is to let your judgment return before your behavior becomes permanent. A calm response might sound like, "I'm going to think about that before I answer." In a hostile conversation, it may be, "I'm willing to discuss the issue when we can do it respectfully." During a public challenge, it may be specific. What exactly are you questioning? That last sentence is especially powerful because vague attacks depend on emotional fog. Asking for precision forces the other person to convert insinuation into a claim that can be examined. Do not defend yourself against an accusation that has not been clearly stated. The person says, Everyone has noticed how difficult you've become. You ask, who is everyone? And what specific behavior are you referring to? They say, you know exactly what you did. You answer, if there is a concrete issue, state it clearly. You are not being aggressive. You are refusing to fight smoke. Emotional control does not mean feeling nothing. Naomi still felt angry. The advantage came from learning that anger did not deserve immediate authority over her mouth. At the next meeting, Victor interrupted again. Naomi stopped speaking. She looked at him for a moment and said, I'll address that after I complete the explanation. Then she continued at the same pace. Victor tried to interrupt twice more. Each time, she returned to the proposal without increasing her volume. The room began noticing his behavior instead of her reaction. This is the reversal. When you stop supplying emotional chaos, the aggressor's pattern becomes easier for everyone else to see. The second advantage is learning to observe incentives instead of obsessing over personalities. When someone works against you, your mind asks, why does this person hate me? That question can become a trap. You spend hours analyzing their childhood, jealousy, insecurity, personality, or hidden feelings. You turn their behavior into a mystery and yourself into the center of it. A better question is, what does this person gain from this behavior? Do they gain attention, status, access, sympathy, control over information, relief from responsibility, a reaction they can use against you, protection from consequences? People often repeat behavior that produces a reward. A coworker may undermine you because confusion improves their position. A relative may provoke you because your anger allows them to present themselves as the calm victim. A competitive friend may minimize your success because doing so temporarily protects their self-image. This does not mean every harmful action is carefully planned. Many people follow incentives without consciously naming them. You do not need to diagnose the person. You need to understand the pattern. Ethan worked with someone named Lucas who constantly asked for small favors. Lucas needed help preparing reports, correcting mistakes, or contacting clients. He praised Ethan's reliability and called him the only person he trusted. Ethan enjoyed feeling respected, so he kept helping. When promotions were discussed, Lucas described those same projects as examples of his leadership. Ethan was furious. He confronted Lucas privately, expecting shame. Lucas smiled and said, I thought we were a team. Ethan left the conversation questioning whether he was selfish. The problem was not that Lucas had discovered Ethan's deepest psychological weakness. He had discovered a simple incentive. Praise produced free labor, and vague language about teamwork protected him when confronted. Ethan changed the reward. The next time Lucas requested help, Ethan replied, send the request by email and include our manager so priorities and ownership are clear. Lucas suddenly needed much less assistance. Ethan did not attack his character. He changed the structure that made exploitation profitable. This is a crucial distinction. If you argue about someone's motives, they can deny them forever. If you change the incentive, the pattern must either adapt or become visible. The third mental advantage is information discipline. Many people reveal too much when they feel threatened. They explain their plans, disclose their fears, name their allies, expose their evidence, and announce exactly what they will do next. They believe transparency proves strength. In conflict, uncontrolled transparency can become a map of your vulnerabilities. Information discipline does not mean lying. It means understanding that honesty does not require total access. You are allowed to think before sharing. You are allowed to keep an unfinished plan private. You are allowed to answer the question that was asked without volunteering 5 more answers. A hostile person may ask, so what are you going to do about it? You do not need to announce your entire strategy. You can say, I'll handle it appropriately. They ask, who else have you spoken to? You can answer, I'm keeping those conversations private. They ask whether you are upset, afraid, or planning to leave. You do not need to provide emotional intelligence to someone looking for leverage, say less. Observe more. This is not silence as theater. Do not become mysterious merely to make people anxious. The purpose is clarity. Every unnecessary detail increases the number of things that can be distorted, anticipated, or used to distract you. Sophia learned this when a friendship quietly became competitive. For years, she told Claire everything: business ideas, financial worries, relationship problems, and opportunities she was considering. Claire listened warmly and often offered advice. Then Sophia noticed a pattern. Ideas she mentioned privately appeared later in Claire's plans. Vulnerabilities became jokes in group settings. Whenever Sophia considered a bold move, Claire produced 10 reasons it would fail. Sophia confronted her after one especially personal joke. Claire responded, "You tell me everything. How was I supposed to know that was secret?" The answer was obvious. But Sophia also recognized her own mistake. She had treated emotional closeness as unlimited permission to disclose. She did not begin a dramatic campaign against Claire. She reduced the information available. When Claire asked about a new project, Sophia said, "It's still developing. I'll share it when it's ready." When pressed about her relationship, she answered, "We're handling it privately." Claire initially became more curious, then more irritated. Without information to manage, her influence weakened. Several months later, Sophia understood something she had missed. Claire had not always given bad advice because she wanted Sophia to fail. Sometimes Claire was projecting her own fear. The harmful result was real even when the motive was mixed. Information discipline protected Sophia without requiring her to turn Claire into a monster. The fourth advantage is making your boundaries predictable and your consequences quiet. Weak boundaries are often loud. They arrive as threats during emotional moments. "If you ever do that again, I'm done. You'll regret treating me this way. I'm warning you for the last time." Then the behavior repeats and nothing changes. The other person learns that your boundary is an emotional performance, not a decision. A strong boundary is less dramatic because it does not depend on fear. It describes the condition of your participation. I will not continue a conversation where I'm being insulted. If my work is used, my contribution must be documented. I won't lend more money while the previous amount remains unpaid. If private information is shared again, I will stop sharing it. Notice the difference. You are not ordering another adult to become someone else. You are explaining what you will do. The consequence must be proportionate, realistic, and under your control. Do not threaten to destroy someone's reputation, expose private information, or create suffering. That turns self-protection into retaliation and gives the conflict a new life. Instead, end the call. Leave the meeting, document the incident, reduce access, decline the favor, move the discussion into writing, use the appropriate professional or legal channel when necessary. Consistency creates credibility. If a person knows that disrespect always ends the conversation, they no longer need to fear your anger. They understand the structure. Priya managed a small team where one employee, Ryan, repeatedly challenged her instructions in front of others. Privately, he was polite. Publicly, he turned routine decisions into debates. At first, Priya answered every objection because she wanted to appear fair. Ryan learned that public resistance earned him attention and forced her to defend decisions she was authorized to make. Priya changed her approach. When Ryan interrupted the next briefing, she said, "If you have operational concerns, send them after the meeting." "We're continuing with the plan," he persisted. She replied, "This is no longer a discussion. We'll address your conduct privately." Then she continued. Afterward, she documented the behavior, explained the standard once, and followed the formal process when it repeated. She did not insult him or question his motives. Ryan had expected either emotional combat or endless debate. Predictable consequences gave him neither. This is what ruthless should mean in a healthy strategy. Ruthless consistency toward your own standards, not cruelty toward another person. The fifth advantage is timing. A true statement delivered at the wrong moment can become strategically useless. When someone is performing for an audience, correcting them may give them the stage they wanted. When a person is emotionally flooded, detailed reasoning may become fuel. When you have incomplete information, confrontation may reveal what you know before you understand what happened. Not every attack deserves an immediate battle. Sometimes the strongest response is to gather facts. Sometimes it is to ask one question and let the contradiction remain visible. Sometimes it is to wait until there is no audience. Sometimes it is to allow a person's repeated behavior to create evidence stronger than your accusation. This is different from avoidance. Avoidance delays action because you fear discomfort. Strategic timing delays action because a better moment improves clarity, safety, or effectiveness. Ask yourself three questions before responding. What outcome do I actually want? What evidence do I currently have? Will acting now improve my position or merely release my emotion? That final question can save you from many expensive mistakes. An angry message may provide temporary relief while creating permanent evidence against you. A public confrontation may satisfy pride while damaging credibility. Exposing everything you know may allow the other person to adjust their story. Do not confuse emotional release with strategic progress. This is where the central revelation appears. Your opponent's greatest advantage may not be their intelligence, influence, or aggression. It may be your need to be understood immediately. You want them to admit what they did. You want the audience to recognize your innocence. You want the liar to confess, the manipulator to feel ashamed, and the rival to acknowledge your strength. That need keeps you inside their frame. You continue arguing because you believe victory requires their agreement. It does not. A person can misunderstand you and still lose access to you. They can deny the evidence and still face a formal consequence. They can call you weak while you make the decision that protects your future. The moment you stop needing the enemy to confirm your version of reality, they lose a powerful method of controlling your attention. Naomi's real breakthrough did not happen when Victor stopped interrupting. It happened when she stopped needing him to respect her before she could respect her own preparation. Ethan did not need Lucas to admit exploitation. He needed clear ownership of his work. Sophia did not need Claire to confess envy. She needed to stop handing over information that repeatedly returned as pressure. This is mental independence, allowing facts, standards, and long-term interests to guide you when ego is begging for immediate satisfaction. The sixth advantage is protecting your reputation through patterns rather than performances. When someone attacks your reputation, the natural urge is to answer every person, correct every rumor, and launch a campaign proving your character. But frantic self-defense can unintentionally magnify the accusation. People who had never heard the rumor now hear it from you. Your reputation is rarely protected by one perfect speech. It is protected by accumulated evidence. Be consistent. Keep records. Communicate clearly. Fulfill commitments. Correct false claims with facts where the consequences matter. Do not chase every whisper through every room. A useful response is, that claim is inaccurate. Here are the relevant facts. Then provide only what can be supported. Do not decorate the truth with exaggeration. One false detail can damage 10 accurate ones. Marcus, a project director, discovered that a former collaborator was telling clients he had taken credit for shared work. Marcus wanted to send a long message to everyone they knew. Instead, he reviewed contracts, emails, meeting notes, and published records. He contacted only the clients directly affected and said, "There appears to be confusion about ownership. I'm sending the documented timeline so you can review it yourself." He did not call the former collaborator dishonest. He did not speculate about motives. He allowed the records to carry the accusation. Some people still preferred the more dramatic story. Marcus had to accept that evidence does not control every opinion, but the relationships that mattered saw a difference. One person was spreading claims. The other was providing documentation. A reputation built over time can survive a temporary attack. A reputation built only on constant approval cannot. This also means choosing your witnesses carefully. If disrespect occurs at work, move important communication into appropriate written channels. If harassment, threats, coercion, or stalking are involved, prioritize safety, preserve evidence, and contact trusted support or the relevant professional authorities. Do not attempt a psychological contest with someone who may be dangerous. Strategy without safety is vanity. The seventh and most ruthless advantage is the willingness to leave the wrong game. Some enemies survive entirely through your participation. They provoke, you defend. They withdraw, you chase. They gossip, you investigate. They move the goalposts, you work harder to prove yourself. Every move keeps them at the center of your mind. You believe you are fighting the person. In reality, you may be feeding the system that gives them importance. Walking away does not always mean physically leaving. It may mean refusing a topic, ending a business arrangement, changing teams, blocking unnecessary contact, declining competition, or no longer measuring yourself against someone committed to misunderstanding you. The point is not to pretend you do not care. The point is to recognize when victory inside the existing game would still cost too much. Daniel spent years competing with his older brother Aaron. Their family compared them constantly. When Daniel succeeded, Aaron mentioned a larger achievement. When Daniel failed, Aaron offered advice that sounded more like superiority. Daniel tried everything. He argued, displayed accomplishments, corrected families. When Aaron compared their homes, Daniel changed the subject. When relatives invited competition, Daniel answered, "We have different lives. I'm not ranking them." At first, Aaron intensified the pressure. The old reactions were missing, so he tried harder to recover them. Then the competition weakened. Daniel had not defeated his brother. He had removed his self-worth from the contest. This is the paradox behind outplaying an enemy. The highest form of control may be refusing to let the opponent define what winning means. If winning means humiliating them, you remain emotionally tied to them. If winning means forcing an apology, they control your peace by withholding it. If winning means proving that everyone prefers you, your confidence remains dependent on an audience. A stronger definition of victory is simpler. You preserve your judgment, protect your interests, maintain your dignity, and continue building a life that does not require the enemy's cooperation. That is why emotional control comes first and exit comes last. Between them are observation, information discipline, boundaries, timing, and reputation. Together, these seven shifts create a person who is difficult to provoke, difficult to exploit, and difficult to misrepresent, but they also create a responsibility. Strategic awareness can become paranoia if you start treating every disagreement as an attack. A friend challenging you may be honest, not hostile. A coworker asking a hard question may be protecting the project. Someone setting a boundary with you may not be playing a power game. Do not label people enemies merely because they frustrate you. Look for repetition, incentives, context, accountability, and consequences. An opponent repeatedly tries to damage your interests while avoiding honest resolution. A difficult person may simply have different priorities. A critic may be exposing something you need to improve. If you cannot distinguish those categories, your strategy will create the enemies you expected to find. The strongest mind remains capable of self-examination. Before deciding that someone is manipulating you, ask whether they stated their needs directly. Before assuming envy, ask whether their criticism contains useful truth. Before calling a boundary disrespect, ask whether you had become accustomed to unlimited access. You cannot outplay others mentally if your ego outplays you first. Return to Naomi's first meeting. Victor asked one strategic question, and Naomi supplied 20 minutes of defense. She believed the danger was his doubt. The real danger was her inability to tolerate being doubted. Once she recognized that, his influence decreased. Later, when he questioned documents speak more loudly than anger. Daniel found peace when he stopped competing for a prize that had never been worth winning. Notice what none of them did. They did not manufacture jealousy, spread rumors, expose secrets, fake weakness, create dependency, or humiliate anyone. Those methods may produce a short-term advantage, but they also create instability, retaliation, and a version of yourself that must keep manipulating to remain secure. Real strategy reduces chaos. Manipulation creates more of it. You do not need to become heartless. You need to become less available to provocation. You do not need to hide everything. You need to stop giving sensitive information to people who repeatedly misuse it. You do not need to threaten consequences. You need to enforce reasonable ones. You do not need to answer instantly. You need to act at the moment that best serves truth, safety, and your long-term interests. You do not need everyone to believe you. You need a pattern of conduct strong enough to survive people who do not. And you do not need to win every conflict. You need the judgment to recognize which conflicts deserve your life. The people who want power over you will often test the same doors. They will question your identity, so you begin performing it. They will provoke your emotions, so your reaction hides their behavior. They will demand private information as proof of trust. They will treat boundaries as hostility. They will create urgency to prevent reflection. They will attack reputation when they cannot control conduct. And when all else fails, they will invite you into a contest with no finish line. Your answer is not greater cruelty. It is control over access to your emotions, access to your information, access to your time, access to your labor, access to your reputation, access to your attention. The enemy can knock. You decide which doors open. This is why calmness can feel ruthless. It offers no emotional handle. It does not give the aggressor a performance to use, an impulsive message to display, or a desperate explanation to distort. Calmness says, I see what is happening. I do not need to become it. There will be moments when you fail. You will send the angry message, reveal too much, or enter a fight that was designed to exhaust you. Do not turn one mistake into an identity. Review the moment without humiliation. What triggered you? What reward did the other person receive? What information did you surrender? What boundary did you fail to enforce? What outcome were you actually seeking? Then change one part of the pattern. Power grows through correction, not perfection. The goal is not to become impossible to hurt. It is to become harder to control through pain. The goal is not to become emotionless. It is to prevent temporary emotion from making permanent decisions. The goal is not to make your enemies fear you. It is to make their usual methods ineffective. That is the mental advantage. When they provoke, you pause. When they accuse vaguely, you request precision. When they seek information, you choose what is relevant. When they cross a boundary, you apply a consequence you control. When they create urgency, you recover your timing. When they attack your reputation, you answer with evidence and consistency. And when the entire game is built to consume you, you leave it behind. If you want more psychologically intelligent guidance on power, boundaries, human behavior, and emotional discipline, subscribe to Dark Realism Psychology. Your enemy loses control the moment your reaction is no longer theirs to choose.